You're listening to the DSW podcast with James Ledger.
Right, so welcome back to the Disability Sport Wales podcast with me, your host, James Ledger. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about disability awareness and disability on mainstream social media platforms. I'm really excited to have this guest on today, World, Paralympic, European and Commonwealth Games medalist, a proud Scot, and it is Maria Lyle. How are you doing, Maria?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
No, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Let's kind of not roll back to the start, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your disability, and how you got involved in the sport?
Well, my name is Maria and I've got cerebral palsy. It affects both my legs, so it's diplegic. I kind of got involved through the sport through my mum. When I was at primary school, I really struggled with everything, really. Even things like playing in the playground, keeping up with my peers. But there was, I think, so it's primary 4, so it's about 8 years old. We had to do this lesson called the Bleep test, like the multi-stage fitness test, which when I found out about that, I was a bit like, oh no, like I always fall over. I'm going to struggle with this. It's going to be another opportunity where I'm just going to look really bad. But my mum was always just like kind of pushed me to do it. She's like, I was never kind of wrapped in cotton wool. So she's like, just get on with it, essentially. So I did and actually surprised everyone. And I was like essentially the last one standing. So I managed to complete the most levels, which I was like very surprised at. And that was that first sense of like achievement for me. I'd never felt that. And I kind of just wanted to keep a hold of that. So my mum and dad would take me out for runs and I would go to the local running club. I think for me, not only was it something that would help with my cerebral palsy, but it would also just having that sense of friendship and belonging. So I really craved that. And it was probably just about 2011, just before like the Paralympic Games, I found out about disability sport. Like at that point, I didn't really view myself as disabled. I'm from a small town. I'm not using a wheelchair and stuff. So to kind of be opened up to that world where I could compete competitively with other people similar to me, that was something I was quite like excited at getting involved with. So it kind of just took off from there. I went down to like disability competitions and kind of got noticed. And probably since the age of 14, I've been lucky to represent Great Britain.
One of the surprising things for me there is a sprinter winning the Bleep test.
Yeah. I'm not probably a natural sprinter, if I'm honest. Like I used to do a lot of like cross country, 800, 1500 meters when I was like young. But when I kind of got involved in kind of Paralympic sport and getting like that your classification, the only events available to me were like the 100 and 200. So I had to make a bit of a switch. I don't think now I could like think of anything worse than cross country. But yeah, that's kind of how that played out.
You've won a medal at every majors you can,
Yeah.
And I bet the Commonwealth Games is a big one, being a proud Scot and everything. Has there been a standout moment for you? You've had an amazing career thus far, and I know there's many amazing times to come, but have you got a standout so far?
Yeah, I think in terms of a medal, it would probably be, there's actually two times. The first one was I won gold with the relay team at World Championships. This is 2015 in Doha. It was like my first time, competing in a relay with other girls, all having cerebral palsy, all coming together to, I've never had that experience of being involved with a team. So having that, working together and getting that goal of what we all wanted to get was like amazing. But I think like another proper one for me is winning my first world title in 2019. The year prior to that, I really struggled with my mental health, and I kind of was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And that kind of year from that point was about trying to get myself to a place where I felt comfortable even within myself and going to like athletics competitions and stuff. So to actually go out there and just enjoy myself, and yeah, I think that the gold medal was just like icing on the cake. So I'd probably say those two.
To be honest, I remember watching it, and I always forget, because you've been on the scene for years, it seems now.
Yeah.
You came on so young, and I remember you from Swansea, maybe?
Yeah.
Europeans, and now, because how old are you now?
So I'm 23 now.
23, yeah. So it feels like you've been around for years, which is
I know, I feel old.
a lot more to come. You mentioned, growing up in a small town in Scotland, and your parents, very much like mine, really kind of just pushed you into whatever possible. How was school for you growing up? And I know for many, school can be a challenge for people with disability, but how was it for you, and how did you kind of overcome any kind of barriers that were kind of put in your way?
At primary school, it wasn't too bad. I never really, like, throughout my whole school career, I've never had like any of my peers say anything about my disability. It's more been like teachers who have like kind of made me feel stupid. Like, I think they just associate somebody with a disability having like a learning disability, which isn't the case for me. I just needed some just other adjustments so then I could keep up with my peers, because I struggle with just tiring and feeling fatigued with just writing and stuff. And I think just those kind of backward kind of opinions and beliefs on disabled people, that kind of affected me a bit more at school. It was probably towards like when I started high school where I became more aware of myself having like a disability and being different to like all my peers. Like, as I've said, like, I'm from a small town. Like, within my school year, there was nobody else with like a physical disability. And I guess like as being a teenager, you're always like aware of what others think and, trying to fit in. And I just didn't feel like I fitted in. I was worried about what people thought, if people were going to say anything about my disability, even though nobody had, or that I was aware of anyway. So I struggled just like being around my peers. So probably from like 13 to even like recently, like last year, it's kind of, yeah, I've struggled with just being comfortable within myself. Like, I remember being at high school and like hardly going in. I would just say, oh, I'm away competing, I'm at a training camp, when I wasn't. I was at home, and I would just say that because I've just felt so uncomfortable being around my peers because I was worried about what they thought. Like, even things like going into the local shop and stuff like that, because everybody knows everyone. And I was just like, oh, like, I wonder what they're going to think or what they're going to say. And I just isolated myself from any kind of social thing, and I felt lonely. So it was like kind of self-sabotage in a way. And I really kind of threw myself into my running as a shield to kind of just hide away from those feelings of like what I was experiencing. And I think that was the problem, was I wasn't tackling those head on. There wasn't much balance within my life. It was just all sport. And when things, perhaps I didn't get the results I wanted within my running, or I didn't run a certain time, it was all negative. And I just think, yeah, it was just a snowball effect. And it got to the point, I just left school. I was 18 at this point, and I had a bit of a breakdown after a race. And that's kind of when I found out about like having like been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And it's taken since probably last year to get to the point like I'm fully comfortable and accepting of my disability.
And they're really powerful points, and I myself have felt their moments as well of feeling extremely lonely in the world. I think sometimes you think, am I the only disabled person in the world sometimes?
It's hard as well, because I guess like if you were to just have a first glance at us, we wouldn't look disabled. Yeah. Whereas actually, yeah, it is hard when you're trying to fit in with kind of society, but then you also don't fit in with like, the typical like somebody with a disability looks like. Because I don't know about you, James, but like I've had people out and about, say I'm using my blue badge and people will question me. And I don't know if you've had similar experiences with that.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, like I think most people think I'm just going to go to the pub because I don't drive at all. So often I get driven around. So yeah, no, I think that kind of social norm of what disabled look like is not the case. They talk about invisible disabilities often, don't they? And I
Yeah.
think it kind of leads me on to the next question. Like the biggest kind of fears or insecurities I face sometimes is about, I know people want to ask me questions, but they just don't. So they see me kind of navigating, or they see me looking at my phone or trying to read a menu, and I can, no, I won't be able to see if they're looking at me, but like in my head, I'm presuming people are like, what's he doing? So I guess, is there times where you feel like people want to ask you questions but never do?
I think so. Like, I think with the example of like using, so I've got a blue badge and using that, I can feel the stares, and it does make me feel really uncomfortable. Like most of the time I just won't bother, because like if I can't be bothered having an argument with somebody, I'll not bother using it. But I think like also at the track, like I train with like the local athletics club. It's like I'm probably like I'm the only one with a disability there, and you can probably like, when there's new people, they're probably looking at me like, why on earth is this girl like training with that group, or like what's like, why is she setting her blocks like that, or like just all these different things I have to do. And I guess people just maybe don't feel comfortable because I think there's this kind of worry about being politically correct and causing offense, especially like in a culture where everyone's like cancelled, or it has to be like this, where actually I think, like, I don't know about you, but I feel like with me, I'd be quite comfortable if people were to ask, oh, why is it that you walk like this or that, as long as it's in a polite way, because that's how you can better educate people.
Absolutely. And I think we both have a very unique look on the world, I guess. We come from a very specific and niche, I guess, market of people. So I guess, yeah, for me, and I completely agree, I think the only way we're going to educate people and help people feel more comfortable is being approachable and being able to talk about it. And now, like you mentioned, for me, like up until 16 to 18, like I would do everything I possibly could to try and hide the fact that I had a disability.
Yeah.
And sport gave me the confidence and made me feel proud of who I am. So now, like you said, it's now I'm confident in who I am. I'll happily walk around McCain and be kind of accepting of who I am.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think even, being involved in disability sport and meeting people, like we were at a training camp together a couple of weeks ago, and I really enjoyed being down there and like chatting to you and all the other guys and stuff that were there. You can have a laugh about disability, but you can also like have serious chats and kind of share experiences. But I think it is nice because it brings people together and you don't feel alone.
I guess the question is like, how do we make the topic of disability more kind of approachable for people? Like, what can be done, do you think, to make people feel more comfortable in talking about disabilities and maybe asking them questions?
So this is very personal, but for me, I like to use humor. Like, I just love to joke about it. And I feel like that, because I feel like my friends used to be a bit on edge about it. But when I would joke about it, it would like kind of relax the situation. I guess that's all very personal, depends on where you're at with like how you view disability and stuff. And I think understanding that there's a line to like you to not cross. But I like to use that. But I think also just kind of, having podcasts like this, sharing people's experiences of disability, I guess like, seeing more disability on TV, not only just like Paralympics, but just like in other kind of areas. Just, I think people don't realize actually how many disabled people there are in the world. And I guess disability, it's not just somebody who uses a wheelchair. Like, I guess it's a condition that causes like lots of things, like disability. I'm trying to think of the correct like definition, but it's like the largest minority group is disability. And I think if people are more aware of kind of disabled people around them, kind of some of the challenges and kind of extra considerations we need to think about going about our daily lives, then I think the world would be a more like accessible place, and disabled people would feel a lot more included. I'm not sure. It's a hard one. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's making it more visible, I think, and having people like yourself, Libby Clegg, Kadina Cox on shows and TV programs that kind of people can relate to and see often, and what you're doing, for example, like what you're doing on TikTok. I have looked, you've got over like 300k likes on your TikToks, and I think things like that really kind of help break down the kind of stigma and barrier to disabilities. Like how did the TikTok come about?
Yeah, it was funny because we got approached just before Tokyo about with somebody. There was a few of us about creating an account and kind of sharing kind of what it was like in the Paralympic Village and stuff. I think some of the Olympians had done that, and I think because of COVID and that, it was a good way of people kind of seeing what it was like being Olympics and stuff, because obviously you couldn't go and watch. So I did a couple of videos doing that, and that was fine. But I was kind of like, I enjoy like a bit more dark humor, a bit riskier, and it's quite like, yeah, I just find that funny. So we did me and my roommate at Polly Mayton at the games were like, let's just do some videos, are a bit more risky, like, but people like really liked it. It kind of went a little bit viral. And I kind of just like, I'd still do videos. Like I don't do it properly. There's some people that do their TikTok every day. Like I just kind of do it when I feel like it. But I found like it's a good way of kind of sharing like kind of the experiences that I face. And I've quite a lot of people that engage in that and share similar experiences, or so I think it's quite nice that way, because it doesn't make you feel like alone, but also kind of, I think having taken a light-hearted side of, say, disability is a good way for me to kind of deal with maybe some of the challenges that I face. And I think it's a good way of kind of getting people aware of the world of a disabled person, maybe somebody that you wouldn't think of as disabled. But no, that's probably how it kind of came about.
I love it. I do admit it is my guilty pleasure TikTok.
Oh yeah, you could spend hours on that.
What would you say to your younger self now, if you could kind of speak to Maria, that maybe that 13-year-old girl back then? What would you say to yourself?
Oh, this is hard. That's the first time I've been asked something like this. I think like just go and get some help. Go and speak to somebody and just say, I'm feeling this, and recognizing that one, that's not normal, but then it's okay, but it's then doing something about it. And I guess actually like embracing having a disability. Like I always say to people, I think it's made me a better person. I've had more opportunities with it than if I didn't have a disability. And like you get to meet so many amazing people and stuff. And it's something different about you. And like different isn't always a bad thing. It kind of makes you stand out a bit. I think I'd be boring with my life without it. I wouldn't, I would just be like just any other person. So I think just, getting some help and actually really embracing having a disability and be like, yeah, this is me. I can't change it. Like there's this quote I like to kind of live by, and it's like, you can't change the cards you were dealt with, but how you play the hand. And it's like, I've been born with cerebral palsy. There's nothing I can do to change it. So I may as well just get on with it and just accept it. And like, if there's going to be people that are backward or going to say things or not be accepting, but why would I want to have those people in my life? So just like, the people that really matter will accept you for who you are.
I love that. And I love that quote. I think it's really kind of will speak to a lot of people. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And my final question is, what advice would you give to those out there who may be kind of entering their sporting journey, or just in life, as you mentioned there? You mentioned a few diamonds in that last bit.
I think with like sport and getting involved in it, I think really making sure you have a balance. Like, I think it's quite easy, when you start to get involved in something, it's going well, to really just kind of narrow your focus. Whereas I think from my experience, I think it's been really healthy to just have balance. Obviously, really focus, train hard in your sport, whatever that is, or even if it's not in a performance sense, if it's just like, I enjoy doing this, that's great. But also make sure you have like other outlets in your life. Say if that's like school, other hobbies, like job, or like, I'm not saying you have to be like a 9 to 4, you've got to be a professional athlete, you've got to do this and that. Like, obviously that's like really difficult, but I just think having a balance, because say if something isn't going right, say like, for example, last year I was injured, and if I just had my running, I would just think about being injured all the time. Whereas if you had, say, something else you could then focus on, so then your life isn't all negative. So I think really having a balance. And then I guess in life itself, sounds really cliche, but just don't care about what people think. Like, yeah, it's quite cheesy, but like it's taken me a long time to really kind of fully accept that. I probably didn't really take that on board until probably like in July, like last summer, like really think about, what, this is me. I don't care. If I want to do this and it makes me happy, as long as it's not harming anybody else, then whatever, and I'll just be me. So I'd probably say those two bits.
Amazing. Maria, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the open, honest conversation we had. I've loved having you on the show today, and thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. All of us at Disability Sport Wales, I know you've got a big year ahead, world champs in Paris, maybe a few Grand Prix before Italy.
Yeah. No, hopefully we'll see a couple competitions.
See you there. But I wish you all the luck for the season, and thank you once again. And thank you for my listeners and people watching on YouTube as well. Really appreciate you joining us today, and make sure you listen to the full episodes on all streaming platforms. And I'll see you on the next Disability Sport Wales podcast.